Hey Dad, back in the day in Ethiopia, what was the primary cause of infant mortality before 2?
It was maternal mortality, it's 50 per 1,000, and the children were under the age of 5, 50%.
50%. What was the main reason, do you think?
The main reasons were low.
Okay. Before we start, let's pray. Heavenly Father, let what we do this evening be to your glory and our benefit. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. For those that are new to tonight, this is not a normal night. Normally on this particular evening we are having a New Testament overview, and for this year there are participant surveys. So normally one of the participants would be leading us through one of the different books, and the idea is threefold. One is to scare the willies out of whoever's doing it, but the second thing is to give people practice at organising their thoughts and getting especially deep into a particular book, and then answer some questions at the end which were pretty much the same as what did you learn out of it. Tonight's speaker is unable to do it for real reasons, I hope. So at the end of Romans, I said that I was talking about Bible study and how to do it in a particular way, and so tonight I do not have an overhead, the data projector running. Abel might help us towards the end. But what I have got this evening is some handouts of various methods of Bible study. And I'm not normally this lost for words. Let me just say this. A lot of the time I think the Bible, this is from my heart, a lot of the time I think that Bible study is half-hearted and flippant. If you get onto the internet and you say, how do I study the Bible? It will normally be 3 to 5 steps. The first step will be something like pray before you read. The second step will be read a passage. The third step will be have your mochaccino and think about it. And then the fourth step will be pray again. Now, I know that sounds a bit facetious, and I was being probably too facetious, but that's not really Bible study. That's not cogitating. That's not thinking things over deeply. And then when I got onto the net, I was trying to find a summary of different methods of Bible study, all of which I think as a pastor you sort of intrinsically do to some extent or another. Some will suit some of you, some will not suit some of you. And I, truthfully, use a little bit of all of them, but I have my own method. And you asked last time, would I show you how I do it? And we will do that at the end. But for now, what I have got is a book of Bible study methods. And we will run through it very, very quickly. Bruce, would you grab not the one at the front, but the one behind, and pass them out at the same time, please? Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, Mr. Richter. I know you didn't need it, but you've got a spare one on the other side, so don't worry. Peter Kelly. See? No. Do you want, bro? You want one? If you look on the second page of that particular thing, 12 Bible study methods, I am not plagiarising. I'm actually giving credit where credit due is, and that is with Richard Warren and Richard Warren and William Shell. Okay, and also I got a lot of information from a website called questions.god.com or questiongod.com and some other places. Now, very, very briefly, because I'd like to spend more time at the end with something that I find personally a lot more difficult, a lot more fulfilling. That first one, the devotional method. And there's nothing wrong with it quickly in the morning or last thing in the evening. And if you look at the layout there, it tells you what tools you need, some hints, and then the steps. Like I said, sorry, this has got 5 steps. I said 3 before. Pray for understanding, guidance as you apply the passage into your life. Meditate on the verses you've chosen for your study. Write out the application. Now, if you look, this is on the first sheet, the application page for method 1. Okay? Now, I have to admit, as a pastor, we pastors should be doing this a little bit more. We tend to be doing deeper Bible study, but at the same time, we pray before we prepare sermons, and I actually find the deeper study better. So pray, meditate, write out, try and memorize a verse, and I know that as you get older, that's difficult. And then assess your application in the weeks that follow for your success or failure. I think they call that journaling, and nobody likes to do that, and very, very few people do it. It is also, in actual fact, a pretty darn good idea. The chapter summary method. The tools you will need is a Bible and some cross-references, which is really good because if you look at my ESV here, you notice up the middle, they've got cross-references. Let me ask you a question. Who here has actually used the cross-references in their Bible? from time to time, but we don't make a habit of it these days. I would suggest to you the cheapest way is, if you have a computer, is a program called YouVersion. It's on the Mac and it's on the PC. There are a number of Bibles that are free, and I would YOU version, one word in the internet age. It's also called YouVersion Bible Study, and you can get by with the KJV and the Dewey Rames and a couple of other Bibles. I would suggest over time that if you're preparing a lot, that you get yourself your favourite, whichever your favourite is. And can I suggest one other thing? Get your least favourite, so that you can cross-reference against that too, and get the Amplified, even though the Amplified is probably a little bit dated in some of its words. And my favourite, not always my preference, but my favourite is the ESV. If you do get the ESV and you've got YouVersion, get the ESV Strongs. Because the best part about ESV Strongs is that if you hold it over a word and click on it, you get the word and its many, many meanings. And on that point, often when you click on the word and it brings up its many, many meanings, you will not understand why they chose which of those particular meanings it was, or why they chose it. And that's why I would say go to the Amplified, go to another Bible. Echo, Sierra, Victor. Yes. I'm not stuck with that. I was looking at for those of you that came on Sunday, every year for the not for the psalm, but for the other readings, we use a different version. So last year it was the Message, wasn't it? This year it's the Good News. Next year I'm thinking of using the Living Translation, just to get people, though we do normally preach from the ESV. Well, not ESV only, or KJV only. All right, the chapter summary method. It involves some writing, and people don't like stuff that takes time. If you don't like writing, do it on your computer. If you've got Word, use comments. If you've got Word, copy the verses onto a page, go to the end of a passage, hit enter a couple of times, indent, write something over it. Make a list or outline of the major points of the chapter. This is actually work. Make a list of the major individuals. Look at the central verse. I have a problem with that. I would like to say look at the central phrase rather than the verse or the central idea, because you'll find that actually sometimes it starts halfway through one verse and finishes halfway through the next, or halfway through the thing. The other thing about crucial words, that is something that I think we don't do well enough, step 5. And the reason is because we don't study English at school anymore. And we treat the Bible as if it's run, Dick, run, or hey, spot, jump. We don't give it the literature, a literature look. We don't look at the words and say, okay, well, why is what's the theme? How are the words telling me what the theme is? List any difficulties you may have with the chapter. Step 6, what you don't understand. Now, I think there should be a step 7 and then a step 8, but list any difficulties that you may have with the chapter. One of the things I think, if you are praying before you go into a Bible study, is this, that when you have a difficulty, it's not the Bible that's wrong. Okay? It's your understanding of the Bible, or the fact that you don't want to change with the Bible. So I think that's something that you have to be very, very careful of. And then 7, cross-references. This is a slightly deeper one, method 2. I will leave you to read it for yourself, otherwise we'll be here all night. Chapter 3, character method of Bible study. It's on page 6. I think this is actually fun. There are more tools that you need to get. You need a Bible. You often need an English dictionary. The other thing is we actually have Google online Bible study tools like that. And so, for example, the first thing I normally do when I click on a character is what's the Hebrew name mean? That often will give you a whole heap of insight as to who the character or what the character is doing. And even in the New Testament, like you can look up Paul, but look up Saul. What does Saul mean? You know, these sorts of things. Steps, select the character, quality you wish to study, look it up in an English dictionary and make notes. You can work that through yourself. Thematic. Can you hear me, Dan? It'll be page 8. Yeah. So up the top on, thematic or theme Bible study method. You will approach a theme within the Bible and perform a basic study of it. It is shorter than the topical method of Bible study, which comes later. So you need to study the Bible and a Bible. You need an exhaustive concordance. And if you don't have an exhaustive concordance, there is some software out there. You can get it on YouVersion, but there's also something called Logos Bible Study, I think it's called these days. It is way too heavy. So unless you're an academic, don't bother. But if you're into it, go for it. There's also another one too that's free. The sword? E-sword? That's it, isn't it? Yeah. Sword. It used to be called E-sword. That's only on PC. Choose a theme to study. Now you've got to remember sometimes themes are dependent upon the scholar that wrote them. So your first thing would be is not to go to what scholars have written. Try and use your memory. Try and get through the scriptures. Try and find what the themes are before you go to a scholar. Method 5, biographical Bible study. Some people really love this. That's on page 9, Dad. Select a Bible character and research all the verses about that person in order to study his life and characteristics. Let me give you one word of advice. There are people in the Bible that have the same name. So be very careful that the person that you're studying, say in Numbers in the wilderness, is the same person that you're studying later on in another book. Make sure they're the same character. Say again? 2 Phillips, yes, like in the New Testament. But, and my mum likes, in a sense, many of the books that my mum tried to get me to read growing up about Ruth and Naomi and Esther and all these were biographical studies of people made into novels. So if you want to write novels for Mills and Boon that are Christian, that's what you do. The next page, page 10, is a list of the major and minor men and the prominent women of the scriptures. And they help you also, I believe, on the next page. They give you 70-odd questions that you can ask against that particular person, and they'll give you a relatively good in-depth, depends how much work you put into it. And then if you go to page 13, there's a list of the positive character traits, a list of negative character traits, and if you do this one, feel free to write a participation survey and come to me, and we will let you take over one of the Tuesday nights and you can give us some insight. Method 6 on page 14, topical Bible study. I really think this is self-explanatory in a sense. Compile a list of words. Actually, that's probably not as intuitive as you think. Compile a list of words related to the topic that you're studying. So, for example, if you look at atonement, you'll find it once. Propitiation, you'll find it twice, I think. But if you look at related words, you'll find that the topic is much broader than just 1 or 2 passages. Method 7, Word Bible study. You can actually buy Bibles that help you along this way. But note 7.1.1 on the top of page 15, Bible and several alternate translations. And this is relatively important because particularly with the Amplified, where they give you a number, it is very, very handy. On Bible translation, when you do have several different translations and they have slightly different wording and words, it is helpful to go right back to the beginning and read the bit that says Bible translation methodology. Try and find out what they were trying to achieve, if that makes sense. So for example, with the Good News, their methodology was to make it so that all of the words were able to be comprehended by a grade 12 student. The NIV, the New Modern one, was to make it all inclusive. So be aware. If you look at the next page, they have actually given you a list of 90 odd words that they feel would help, and I think they're all great words. Method 8 on page 17. In many ways, this should be done before you go to any new book. You'll need a dictionary, you'll need an encyclopedia. Online is very, very helpful, and even though I do not trust AIs 100%, Logos Bible Software has on its website a Christian AI. I don't think we'll see them in heaven, but it has done a lot of cross-referencing, and the AI will ask you what your denomination is, and then as you ask questions of it, it will help you a bit. So I think that online would help you a lot here. But do an online background study. One of the things that I like to do, other things that people, I don't know if other people do, is say for example, I'm looking at say the 400 silent years, and I'm looking at Qumran and the Dead Sea Scrolls. I remember asking a question, and the question was, 200 years before the birth of Christ, how many people were literate in Judea? Now, that might sound like a silly thing, but it gives you an idea of whether or not it was an oral society or whether it was a written society or a mix. You can ask questions that we never think about. What sort of food did people eat at that particular time? That'll give you an idea of their health. What did they live in? What were the main jobs? So don't just think about Bible topics. Think about other topics that will give you insight into here. So for example, you think about right now. What is the main job for people in Walgaroo? And then ask the question, what is the main job for people in North Sydney? You'll get a totally different, or there you go, that's another one. What is the median income for people in Walgaroo? What is the median income for people in North Sydney? How does that relate to the Bible or Bible study? What about the story of the rich man and Lazarus? Which side are they going to feel most aggravated by when they hear that in North Sydney? Because in a sense they'll be going, but hang on. It's what we do every day. Whereas in a lot of parts of here in Walgaroo, it's going to be relatively poor retired people and people of other ethnic backgrounds that are basically on welfare. And they're going to look at it a different way. So I would say that when you're doing background, try and get some of these other information. Book survey method of the Bible study. You can read that one for yourself, but there is a book out there called How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth by... Brian, can you look that up for me? How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. I know the guys, and I can't remember. They gave me permission to use it in Ethiopia for free and to print it for free, so I'm going to plug that book. So thank you. And also, How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth. Never mind. Did you find it? Who the authors were? Brad Gordon Fee, was it? Yeah, it's been updated. It's been updated about 4 times now, or 3 times now. Yep. Good book. Chapter 10, analysis, the chapter analysis method of the Bible study. I have a little bit of problem with this because the numbers of chapters and verses came so much later. I would prefer to say do an idea analysis. Look for starting statements and finishing statements. 11, book synthesis method. Summarising. It's really good for the shorter books. It's a bit difficult for Isaiah. But you get the drift. Yeah, you are right. However, I do think that many people don't realise that the chapters were put in first and that the verses came in second, and that they're not actually divine. I think people do forget that they were there for a method of identifying exactly where something is. I think the people that put it in did their best at the time. So, but I would say make it a bit broader than that. Always make it a bit broader than that. Book synthesis method, like I said, it's easy for short books, not so easy for long books. Verse by verse method of Bible study. This is good, this is hard, but I will say do not cherry pick your verses. If you're going to do this, start at the beginning of start at the beginning of a book and work your way through a book. And also remember, some of the Bible books are a section of 3 or 4 books as well. So for example, Psalms is 5 books. So you don't actually have to start at 1, you can start at wherever. As I said, here, 1 through 12. So if you've got a scanner at home and you want to do this, this is just a way of focusing and helping yourself. So for example, why don't we turn to 11? 10. You'll notice on section 10, gives you a lot of room to do certain things. You can look at that at your own leisure. If you want another clean version, I've got 2 more there, or 3 more there if you want to know 2 more. Now, having said all that, you asked me last time to do what I do, tell you what I do. And I thought I would get a piece of paper, or I'd give you a passage. Yeah, Dad. Now I do have to say, this method that I'm talking about doesn't always work well for narratives. It does work for narratives. Sorry? What do you mean? Yeah, no, I know, but I wanted you to have a pen here tonight so that we could have a play. Oh, I can email it to you if you want. Just let me know. Sorry, bro. I'm not going to need a pen. One thing I haven't got. I'm not always consistent with how or what I market, or how I market, but the idea is the same every single time. I started at Romans chapter 14 because it's sort of the start of a new thought. And so what I would do, and I'm just going to talk you through it, and when you've had enough, tell me, but I'll tell you what I would do. So, for the very first verse, it starts, I am, and finishes with foolish. The very first word of verse 15 is so, which is an idea word. It's a pointer word. It's telling me that it's a conclusion word. So I would, in actual fact, underline or circle so. And because I've seen so, I'm going to skim very, very, very quickly. And this is actually before I read it again. So I'm just skimming. Verse 16 has a 4 in front of it. Halfway through 16 there's a 4, where it says, for it is the power of God. That next, for salvation, I would underline very quickly the power of God for salvation, and I would sort of double underline salvation because it's a concept. There's a direction word too, that's in 16, so I'd put an arrow there. There's another direction word in the next phrase, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Verse 17 starts with for again, so there's another argument word. And as I go along, for righteousness of God is revealed from and for, but I wouldn't circle them because that's a phrase, and I would put brackets around from faith for faith. As it is written, so that the righteous shall live by faith, as it is written. I would actually go and try and find out where that came from. You know, I'd look in the references in the middle of my Bible and say, okay, where did that particular come from? And then I literally would go and read where that came from. God's wrath on unrighteousness you can cross out because that came from ESV. Notice it, verse 18 starts with a 4. Now, it's interesting here. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men. That little who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth is a side idea. So I'd actually probably put that in brackets so that I know that it's related to the beginning of verse 18. And then you get verse 19. For what? Okay, about this planet, there's because. For, verse 20. Now, at the end of the last sentence in verse 20 is so. So there's another argument word. Now, here you go. Verse 21 starts with for, although. But in the middle of verse 21, but they. And there's that and. But they became futile in their thinking, and. So I would circle that. 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanging the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Do you remember how I said to you before, and often when Paul makes a statement like that, look up, not down? So actually, if you go and look for all of those so, for, verse 14, right up to 22. So that's a statement. Because of all of this, claiming to be wise, they became fools. He follows on, so he's got a little side note there. Verse 24, therefore. So he's coming to a conclusory statement. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity. That's 1. Dishonouring of their bodies among themselves. That's 2. Because there's another direction word or result word. And you notice that they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, so that's one part of it. Worshipped, 2, and served, 3, the creature rather than the creator, and then he puts that exclamation at the end. Going to the second page, it starts again. Verse 26, 4. Now what's for this reason? What's that refer to? Everything that's come beforehand. Yeah. God gave them up to dishonourable passions. Okay. No. No. No, no. For this reason is a statement of direct application. Okay. Say again? No, it's a... Yeah. Yeah, this is the reason that this is happening. Yeah. And then he gives us a couple of examples halfway through 26. For their women, okay, and then in 27, and the men, so that's connected to for their women. 28, and since. Number 1, God gave them up to a debased mind. And then he starts to give us all these examples. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness. There's a semi-conclusory statement in verse 32. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them but give approval to those who practice them. It's almost like, hey, I've said all this stuff and this is the result. But he keeps going on. And the reason I say he keeps going on is because often we end that thought there at the end of verse 31 because chapter 2 starts next. All right, we just leave it. But there is a conclusory statement right here. Therefore, you have no excuse. And then, in a sense, the next 4, which is halfway through verse 1, is the start of a whole new idea in a sense. All right? Now that's the first run that I would do. Okay? And then I would probably change colour, and then I'd start looking at ideas. And normally what I do then is I put them double stripes in one side of the page, and I do use paper. So for example, with going back to verse 14, I would be looking at what obligation means and what he means by obligation. Okay, because to me, duty and obligation are things you cannot get out of. And I would like to know if that's the depth of what that word means. But it's interesting, Greeks and barbarians, wise unto the foolish. What does that mean? Yeah. It's a really long-winded way of saying to everybody, but it actually points because he's using I don't like using this word because I don't think he meant it in this particular way, but he's using anti-racism. Okay? He is... Yes, go ahead. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And see, this is the thing, Paul does this so beautifully all the way through. I would see, both to Greeks and to barbarians, okay, we don't comprehend that. We really don't comprehend that. Because we think, oh, Greeks, Greece, barbarians, others. And I think you'd have to say, look, he's saying Australians and Papua New Guineans. Or Australians and yes, yeah, that would actually work. I was thinking of Australians and Americans, but yeah, that works, and it does work. To the wise and to the foolish. I always think it's interesting. Everyone thinks they're wiser than they actually are. Say again? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she was a good actress, wasn't she? Sorry. All right. Moving on. No, actually, we won't move on. Do you get what I'm saying? All right. And it's taken us only 20 minutes, and I think in that we've had a little bit of a better view on.
How do you structure all that? You've done all that preparation.
How do I do it? All right, I do this like this, okay, and then I go back to the computer. No, I won't get up, I'll do it, because you can imagine it in your head. All right, so I would go back to the computer, and because I've already got this and printed this, I keep this. All right, so it will be in my files, and it will say Romans, the file name's not on this one. It'll be Romans chapter 1, 202608, and I did this on Saturday, so there'll be 202622. Romans 1 through 14, 2 through 1 dot pages. Okay, I print it, and then when I've done it like this, I go back to it and I go, all right, the first sentence can stay like it is. With that, so I would not indent, carriage return probably twice. All right. Yep. Carriage return twice. I would preach the gospel to you who are in Rome. 4, and I would indent it 1. The next 4, I'd 2 lines and indent it 1. To the Greek first and also the Jew. That part, I would indent it 3 times. So I'm watching the cascade of what he's trying to say. 4, I'd probably indent once. I'd indent as it is written, and then I'd go and get the cross-reference. I'd go down 3 or 4 lines, and I would put where it was from, and I might even go to YouVersion and grab it and shove it in there, shove it right across, but so that I can read it straight away. For the wrath of God would be same line, 4, the wrath of God. For what can we know would be in 1. Because would be under it. For his invisible attributes would be there, and then I would break eternal power, divine nature into separate things. Have been clearly perceived since the creation of the world in the things that were made would be 1 sentence. No, by idea. By idea. Exactly. And I often will turn it landscape so that I can get it to go. And I will admit, I have a wide screen. It's not expensive, it's not a gaming screen, it's not at 100 hertz, it's at 40 hertz or whatever it is, but it's wide enough so that I can have my YouVersion there, pages wide there, and whatever else I'm working on the other side. But if I put it landscape, when I'm doing this, I can get a lot more on the page at the same time. And I have to admit, I don't do it in 14, I do it in 16 or 18 font now because I can't see properly, and that helps me. Does that answer you? Any other question about that sort of stuff? And I do it. I'm just letting you know, I do actually do it. No, the reason I take weeks to go through 2 verses is because I actually try to seriously think about the questions that no one's asked about that particular verse, or I try and say, how many other sermons have I heard on this particular passage and where did they go? And perhaps it's not best to go to what's already there. I was at I think I've told this, you Peter and Kelly, you won't know this. I was at a pastor's conference once, and I don't go to them very often because I find them distressing. But I did a survey, and I asked the people 2 questions. I'll leave the first one. The second was, where do you preach from? And it came out in the end that most of the people in the room preached from 40 different passages. That's it. And if people preach from 40 different passages, you will find that they preach the same thing. And to be honest, most people don't spend enough time. I know you can spend, no. If you're being paid to work, you can spend too much time. But in a sense, you can't spend too much time preparing things. But you can't afford to go down the path of just giving people what they've heard beforehand. You actually have to go down the path of, okay, I'm going to ask questions. And I think I've been asking, now I think I put the questions up on the screen so that you get to participate with me as I go through and find the things. So that's why it takes time. It's just asking the questions. And the other thing too is I think that a lot of people are now illiterate in Christianese. So we use ideas, and 50 or 60 years ago, nearly everyone in the church understood what those words meant, but now they understand a portion of what that means. And I hate to say this, Dad, and you're gonna go, yep, right. When you listen to old hymns, okay, you actually have to be an older Christian to understand what's being said, because they're huge, really deep theology, and a lot of the times young people or younger Christians don't get them, is because they really don't make sense. I've been washed in the blood. It is scary. But then, when you've explained it and what it means, it's suddenly like, oh, okay, I get it. Are you okay, Dad? Oh, the chairs. Mucking around. Sorry. So does that answer your question why it takes so long? I really do try and work out not what other people haven't thought about, because if you find something in the scriptures that no one else has found before, you're probably wrong. Okay? But what no one else has talked about recently. That's what I think is what I'm trying to do. You know, not breeze over words. Anyone else? Yes. Intending. Yeah. Yeah. I agree, but you have to be careful for both of them, all right? It started in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and I do think it's a thing of the devil, but it happened in universities, and it was to get people to believe that it is the hearer that gets to decide the meaning of what is being written or spoken. Sorry? Except it was much more subtle than that, all right? That has influenced the church, and it's influenced the church in many ways, in the sense of the emergent church and, you know, the well-meaning church. You know, we can discard some things. Now, Ian is right, we do have to go back. What was the context then? But this is where we have to be careful. We have to be careful that sometimes we look at something, we say the context is then, but we have nothing like it. So we don't, not you, Ian, but people say we don't have anything like that, so it doesn't apply to us. And of that we have to be really super careful, because one of the things I find amazing, particularly about the New Testament, is that we are told how to do very few things. We are told that there are things that we need to do, communion, baptism, etc., worship, but we're not told how to do them, because then it would often become legalism. So I think we've got to be, and there is a line there. Okay, yes, look at the context and everything else, but there will be an application for today. Just make sure you don't get that application muddled. That's what I was alluding to beforehand when I said if you have a new thought, it's very, very likely that it's wrong. That is true. One of the things I've tried to get, and I think it's only my second son that's really got this idea, and that is that you have to force yourself to make the scriptures your foundation when you think. Now, I think, Bonhoeffer was great. Kant was interesting. And if you look at, there's a lot in philosophy. There are parts of philosophy that are really, really good. And so you can't poo-poo them all. But as soon as they start contradicting what the scripture says in its basic understanding, at that point it becomes wrong. All right? It's the same with, I don't agree with everything N.T. Wright has written. All right? But he is a brilliant theologian. Don't throw out the 95% of what N.T. Wright has written, because in 1% of stuff, he's a little bit whatever. We wouldn't throw out John MacArthur, even though there's 1% of John MacArthur that is probably a little too one-eyed when it comes to Roman Catholicism. Okay? We've got Baptists here, they're allowed. Sorry, I'm just, well, I am a Baptist too, so it doesn't matter. But I was having a bit, we don't all agree on certain things. Anything else? Because we...
I think it's interesting. I grew up in a Methodist background, and when we went into uniting church, we were told that the Bible contained the Word of God. And I was in some of the high levels of the church. We were told that in fact it was much more important what it said to you than what it said to people looking at it objectively. Now, I don't want to get into that argument because you know which side I stand on. But I think a lot of people in the church have somehow or other soaked that concept up. And so I think we are united. We're not perfectly, but we are. But when we talk amongst our church members, a lot of them are still thinking what they were pressured to think as the church changed.
I agree with that. I think I was alluding to that when I said the influence of university on trying to change understanding to what the reader understood rather than what the author was saying. Because you think about that. How many hours a week do you spend at church? 2. All right? How many hours a week does a first-year university student spend at university getting indoctrinated? And I would say indoctrinated these days. It wasn't so bad the first time I went to university. The second time it was starting to get quite strong. They spend at least 16 hours for 4 101s, plus the time that they spend talking with other students, you know. And then, because most, and I'm not picking on the young Bible study leaders, but the young Bible study leaders have the same idea, so when they go to Bible study, they get the same idea again. Now, that's the product now. Okay, Dad, Bruce, Gary and myself, we're all very fortunate because we had you and Donald McKay and Whitworth Kennedy and even Donald Napa, whatever his name, across the road at the Presbyterian Church, and the Baptist Church when it was on the other road. So that's just history. Anything else? You're welcome. Peter and Kelly, it's not normally like this. It normally is a bit of a old-fashioned Anglican lecture. The next one will be on the second Tuesday of next month. My daughter is having a birthday early in October. It is possible that we won't be here for one of the ones in October.
He's also going to become a grandpa then.
Well, Mum, that's what happens when your daughter has a baby.
But you didn't mention the baby.
No, I did.
You said a birthday.
N-
You said
Did I say birthday?
Yes, you did.
Oh, sorry. It is a birthday. What are you talking about, Mum? Come on. An impending birth. So the baby... I'm going to go really out on a political and a religious rhythm. The baby will be 9 months old on that day. Are we live, Abel? I'll be sacked on next Tuesday, so don't worry. It is. Yeah. So, any other comments before we close for tonight? Yeah. There are some other pieces up here if you want it. Peter, can you close in prayer, please? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Amen.